My wife Emily died at 40 in a car crash that should not have happened. The police said she swerved to miss a dog hit a telephone pole doing 55 miles per hour on Oak Avenue, a road she had driven 1,000 times before. The dog lived. She did not. That was 4 weeks ago, and I am still trying to make sense of how my entire life collapsed in the span of a single phone call from Cleveland Medical Center. I sold everything to bury her. Our house went to the first cash buyer who showed up. My truck went to my Uncle Frank for half what it was worth. I even pawned the Rolex my grandfather left me, the one he wore for 42 years at the Ford plant. $45,000 for a funeral. That is what it costs to say goodbye to someone you thought you would grow old with. The funeral director, a man named Miller with soft hands and a softer voice, kept talking about payment plans. But Emily deserved better than being buried on credit. The day we put her in the ground was unseasonably cold for November. I stood there in my only black suit, watching them lower her casket into the earth, thinking about the last words we had exchanged. We had argued about paint colors, ocean mist versus harbor gray for a guest room nobody ever used. I had been irritated, told her it did not matter, and she had kissed my cheek anyway, said maybe someone would use it soon, and walked out the door. Those were her last words to me about paint. Her sister Jessica had stood apart from everyone else during the service, wearing dark sunglasses even though clouds blocked the sun. She had always been the difficult one, the sister who thought Emily had married beneath her. While everyone else offered condolences and casseroles, Jessica kept her distance until the very end, until that hydraulic system was lowering my wife into the ground. She approached me, then touched my arm with her cold fingers, and leaned in close enough that I could smell the cigarette smoke clinging to her black dress. What she whispered took 8 seconds to say, but would haunt me forever. She was leaving you anyway for her yoga instructor. My brother Logan asked what she had said. I could not form words. My legs felt disconnected from my body. The minister was saying something about eternal rest, but all I could hear was Jessica's words echoing in my head. Leaving you anyway. The yoga instructor's name was Ryan. I had met him once at a studio fundraiser. 28 years old, with perfect posture in a man bun. That night, alone in our house that already belonged to strangers, I tore through Emily's belongings like a man possessed. I needed to know if Jessica was telling the truth. I went through her emails, her texts, her credit card statements. Nothing about Ryan. Nothing about leaving. But in her jewelry box, underneath the sterling silver necklace I had given her for our 21st anniversary, my fingers found something that did not belong. A USB drive, black plastic, no bigger than my thumb. There was a piece of masking tape on it with Emily's handwriting, the same careful script she used for grocery lists and love notes. It read, "If I die before 40. My hands trembled as I carried it to my laptop. The house was silent except for the hum of the computer starting up. One file appeared on the drive, a video dated 4 weeks before her death, the day she had come home late from what she had said was a closing that ran long. I clicked play, and my dead wife's face filled the screen. But this was not the Emily who kissed me goodbye over paint swatches. This woman looked terrified, her eyes darting to something off camera every few seconds, like she expected someone to burst through the door. "Ethan," she began, and her voice cracked on my name. "If you are watching this, they killed me. I found out something about your family that they have been hiding for 30 years. The proof is in your father's workshop." Life with Emily had become predictable in the way that 16-year marriages often do. We knew each other's coffee orders, could predict each other's reactions to movies, and had long stopped fighting about whose turn it was to take out the trash. It was Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for me always had been. She handled the recycling on Wednesdays. That was us, a well-oiled machine that had forgotten it was supposed to be a romance. We had met at my cousin Tyler's wedding in 2010. She was the maid of honor in a lavender dress that made her skin glow, and I was the groomsman who accidentally knocked over a full glass of champagne, sending it cascading down that expensive fabric. Instead of the fury I expected, she laughed. A real laugh that came from somewhere deep in her chest and said, "Well, now I do not have to worry about looking too perfect in the photos." That was Emily. Always finding the bright side of things, always making disasters feel like adventures. Our house sat on a tree-lined street in suburban Cleveland, a 3-bedroom colonial with good bones and bad plumbing that I was always promising to fix. The neighborhood was full of families with kids, and for years we had tried to add our own to the mix. 2 miscarriages, 4 rounds of IVF, and finally a doctor who sat us down and explained that sometimes bodies just do not cooperate. Em cried for a week, then one morning announced we were getting a dog instead. We never did get that dog. Sunday dinners with my mother Margaret had become our tradition. She lived 20 minutes away in the same ranch house where I had grown up, and she treated Emily like the daughter she had never had. They had spent hours in the kitchen together, Margaret teaching her the secret to perfect pot roast while I watched football with my father David in the living room. He was a quiet man, a retired U.S. Marshal who could fix anything with his hands but struggled to say what was in his heart. The closest he came to emotion was the day he pulled me aside at my wedding and said, "You got a good one, son. Do not mess it up." My brother Logan lived 2 streets over with his wife Karen and their twin boys. We had game nights once a month where Emily would dominate at Scrabble while accusing everyone else of making up words. She was always right. Karen would bring her famous spinach dip. Logan would drink exactly 3 beers before switching to water, and we would pretend we were not getting older, that our lives were not slowly calcifying into routine. Emily worked as a real estate agent for Riverside Realty, a mid-sized firm downtown. She was good at it, had a way of matching people with houses that fit them perfectly. She would come home with stories about families finding their dream homes, about the joy on their faces at closing. Her commission checks kept us comfortable, allowed us to dream about maybe buying a cabin up north someday somewhere near Sandusky where we could escape when the city felt too heavy. I taught chemistry at Lincoln High School, the same school I had graduated from 25 years earlier. My students called me Mr. D, not because I was tough, but because they could not pronounce my last name properly. Davies. It never bothered me. I loved teaching, loved the moment when a difficult concept finally clicked for a student. The pay was not great, but combined with Emily's income, we did fine. We were planning a trip to Italy for our 21st anniversary. Still 6 years away, but something to look forward to. The morning she died started like any other. I was grading lab reports at the kitchen table while she stood at the counter holding up paint swatches against the morning light streaming through the window. The guest room had been bothering her for months. She said it needed personality, needed to feel welcoming. I was tired, had stayed up too late preparing lessons for the week, and her indecision over 2 nearly identical shades of blue irritated me more than it should have. "Oh, mist or harbor gray?" she asked, though harbor gray looked blue to me too. "They are the same color, M. Just pick one. They are completely different. Look at the undertones. Nobody ever uses that room anyway." She walked over, kissed my cheek despite my grumpiness, and said something that would replay in my mind 1,000 times after she was gone. Maybe someone will soon. Then she grabbed her purse and keys, said she had an early showing on the east side, a young couple looking for their first home. The door closed behind her at 8:17 a.m. The police knocked on that same door at 11:55 a.m. The funeral nearly destroyed me both financially and emotionally. What they do not tell you about death is how expensive it is to die properly. The funeral director, Mr. Miller, had a voice like warm milk and hands that had never known hard work. He sat across from me in his mahogany-paneled office, sliding packages across the desk, like he was selling vacation timelines, not coffins. The basic package was $30,000. That did not include the cemetery plot, the headstone, or what he called additional memorial services. By the time he finished adding up the numbers, we were at $45,000. "We offer payment plans," he said, his voice dripping with practiced sympathy. But Emily deserved better than installment payments. She deserved to be buried without debt collectors hovering over her grave. That is when I discovered she had let our life insurance lapse 6 months earlier. The letter from the insurance company was hiding in her desk drawer, stamped policy terminated in red ink. When I called them desperate, they said she had stopped paying premiums, mentioned something about restructuring finances. She had never said a word to me. I emptied our savings account, first $15,000 we had saved for that Italy trip. Then I sold the house to a flipper named Gary, who showed up with cash and a calculator offering $60,000 below, asking if I could be out in a week. I took it. My truck, a Ford F-150 I had bought new 6 years earlier, went to my Uncle Frank for $9,000, less than half what it was worth. He knew he was taking advantage. Kept saying he was doing me a favor, that nobody else would give me cash that fast. The watch was the hardest to let go. My grandfather had worn it every day at the Ford plant from 1958 until he retired in 1998. A Rolex Submariner, scratched and worn, but still keeping perfect time. The pawn shop owner, a Vietnamese man named Duke, gave me $4,000 for it. I hold for 6 months, he promised. You come back. We both knew I would not. The funeral itself was a blur of black clothes and practiced sympathy. My Aunt Susan kept touching my shoulder, telling me Emily was in a better place, as if dying at 40 was somehow an upgrade. My colleague Brian from the science department shook my hand too hard and mumbled about time healing all wounds. My mother Margaret stood beside me like a century deflecting well-meaning mourners when their condolences became too much. But Jessica stood apart from everyone, leaning against the funeral home's back wall like she was holding it up. She wore oversized sunglasses even though we were indoors. Her arms crossed tight against her chest. During the viewing, while others approached the casket to say their goodbyes, she stayed frozen in place. When the service ended and people filed out for the procession to the cemetery, she was already in her car smoking with the window cracked. At Greenwood Cemetery, the November wind cut through my suit like it was made of paper. The priest, Father Murphy, read from Ecclesiastes about there being a time for everything, but all I could think about was Emily's time had been cut short by a dog that someone could not be bothered to leash. The hydraulic system, lowering her casket, made a mechanical worrying sound that seemed too industrial, too cold for this moment. That is when Jessica finally approached. Everyone else had thrown their roses onto the casket, but she still held hers, a white rose that stood out against her black dress. She stopped beside me, close enough that I could smell her cigarette breath mixing with her expensive perfume. Her hand touched my arm, fingers cold even through my jacket. She was leaving you anyway. She whispered, her voice steady and cruel. For her yoga instructor Ryan thought you should know. The words hit me like physical blows. I stood there unable to move or speak as she tossed her rose onto the casket and walked away, her heels clicking on the cemetery's paved path. My brother Logan immediately asked what she had said. His wife Karen looked concerned. Even my normally oblivious Father David noticed something was wrong. Nothing, I managed to say. She said nothing. But that night alone in a house that already belonged to strangers, Jessica's words consumed me. I pulled our wedding album off the shelf and threw it against the wall. The binding split, sending photos cascading across the floor. I found myself on my knees gathering them up while sobbing so hard I could not breathe. Then the sobbing turned to rage, and I started searching through Emily's things, needing to know if Jessica was telling the truth, needing to understand why my wife would betray 16 years of marriage for a 28-year-old yoga instructor with perfect abs and a man bun. I searched through everything that night. Her emails showed nothing but work correspondence and Amazon receipts. Her credit card statements revealed no suspicious charges, no hotel rooms or romantic dinners I did not know about. Her phone, which I had retrieved from the police with her other personal effects, contained hundreds of texts between us, mundane and loving in equal measure. The last one she had sent me was a heart emoji after I had texted that I would pick up milk on the way home. In her jewelry box beneath the tangle of necklaces and earrings I had given her over the years, my fingers found something that did not belong. A USB drive, small and black, with masking tape wrapped around it. Emily's careful handwriting spelled out 5 words that made my blood run cold. If I die before 40. My laptop sat on the kitchen table where I had left it that morning, back when my biggest concern was grading lab reports. The house was silent except for the refrigerator's hum and my own ragged breathing. I inserted the USB drive with shaking hands. One file appeared on the screen, a video dated 4 weeks before her death. November 2nd, the day she had come home, 2 hours late from what she had said was a complicated closing. I clicked play and Emily's face filled the screen. But this was not my Emily. This woman looked haunted, her eyes darting off camera every few seconds, her hands trembling as she adjusted the camera. She was in our guest room, sitting on the bed we had bought but never had guests use. Behind her, the walls were still that awful beige color she had been so desperate to change. "Ethan," she began, and her voice cracked like she had been crying. "If you are watching this, it means they killed me. And before you think I am being dramatic or paranoid, please just listen to everything I have to say." She held up a manila folder thick with documents. 4 weeks ago, I was showing a house on Pinecrest Drive. The buyer never showed, but I found a box in the basement that the previous owner must have forgotten. It was full of old FBI documents, surveillance photos, trial transcripts. Your father's name was all over them. Ethan David Davies is not who you think he is. My stomach dropped as she continued pulling papers from the folder and holding them up to the camera one by one. Your Uncle Frank is not your father's brother. His real name is Jeffrey Davies. He testified against the Davies crime family in 1995 as part of a federal witness protection deal. Your father, David, was not an electrician. He was a United States Marshal assigned to protect him. She showed a photograph to the camera, grainy but clear enough. My father, younger, wearing a United States Marshal's badge, standing next to men in FBI windbreakers. Your whole family is in witness protection, Ethan. You, Logan, your mother, Margaret. None of you are who you think you are. The room seemed to spin as she kept talking. But here is the worst part, the reason we could never have children. It was not me, and it was not bad luck. When you were 4 years old, your father authorized an experimental procedure. You were sterilized, Ethan. There is a sealed court document explaining that the Davies bloodline was deemed too dangerous to continue. The federal prosecutor insisted on it as part of the immunity deal. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Your birth name was Charles Davies, Jr. Your biological father was the head of the crime family. He ordered the murders of 3 judges before they finally convicted him. Your mother, your birth mother, made a deal with the federal agents to give you and Logan new lives. But the price was ensuring the bloodline ended with you two. She wiped her eyes and leaned closer to the camera. I confronted David about this last month. I thought he would deny it, but he did not. He told me I was putting everyone in danger by digging into this. He said the Davies never forget, never forgive, and if they found out where you all were, they would kill every last one of you. He told me to forget what I had learned, to burn those documents, to pretend I had never seen them. Her voice grew stronger, more determined. But you deserve to know who you are, Ethan. You deserve to know why we could not have children, why your father has enough cash hidden in his workshop to disappear at a moment's notice, why there are no photos of any of you from before 1996. The proof is in his workshop in a metal box marked circuit breakers. He does not know that I know about it. She looked directly into the camera, and for a moment she was my Emily again. I was not having an affair with Ryan. I have been meeting with him because his brother is a federal attorney. I was trying to figure out how to get us away from here safely. How to tell you the truth without destroying your whole world. But I think David knows what I have been doing. I think he told someone. And if something happens to me, if they make it look like an accident, you need to know it was not." The video cut to black. I sat in the darkness of our kitchen, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what I had just learned. Then I grabbed my phone and called Logan. "Meet me at Dad's workshop," I said. "Right now. Do not tell anyone where you are going." The workshop sat behind my father's house like it always had a converted garage that smelled of sawdust and motor oil. David had spent 40 years in that space or so, I had believed, fixing televisions and radios for neighbors who called him the best United States Marshal in Cleveland. The fluorescent lights flickered on when I hit the switch, illuminating the pegboard walls lined with tools I now wondered if he had ever really used. Logan arrived 5 minutes after me, his face creased with concern. "Ethan, what the hell is going on? It is 11 hours at night. Help me find a box marked circuit breakers," I said, already pulling containers off the metal shelving units. "You are scaring me, brother. Is this about Emily? You need to talk to someone about your grief." I shoved the USB drive into his hand. "Watch this on your phone while I search." The workshop was organized with military precision, every tool in its place, every box labeled in David's blocky handwriting. I found boxes marked fuses, wire nuts, voltage testers, but no circuit breakers. Logan stood frozen in the corner, his face illuminated by his phone screen, growing paler with each second of Emily's video. "This cannot be real," he whispered when it ended. "Keep looking," I said now, checking behind the workbench under tarps anywhere a box could be hidden. That is when I noticed the old craftsman tool chest in the corner, the one David had supposedly inherited from his father. The bottom drawer was locked, had always been locked. "Never keep anything important in there," he had told us as kids. "Just old electrical manuals." I grabbed a crowbar and forced it open. The lock snapped with a sound like a gunshot. Inside, beneath a layer of yellowed repair manuals, was the box. Circuit breakers written on masking tape just like Emily had said. The contents destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Photographs. First David in a United States Marshal's uniform standing outside a federal courthouse. A younger version of me and Logan with different names on school ID cards, Charles Davies Jr. and Vincent Davies. A woman I did not recognize holding us both labeled on the back, Maria Davies, 1994. Then the documents. A witness protection agreement dated December 1st, 1995. Jeffrey Davies, also known as Uncle Frank, agreed to testify against the Davies crime family in exchange for immunity and new identities for his entire extended family. A medical record from Cincinnati Children's Hospital made me drop to my knees. Bilateral vasectomy performed on Charles Davies Jr., age 4. Procedure authorized by United States Marshal David Davies as per federal prosecutor requirements. Logan found his own medical record. Same procedure, same age. We had both been sterilized as toddlers, our futures stolen before we could even form memories. "We need to confront him," Logan said, his voice shaking with rage. David was in his recliner when we burst into the house, watching the 10:30 news like this was any other night. My mother, Margaret, or whoever she really was, sat on the couch knitting. They both looked up, and I saw it immediately in their eyes. They knew why we were there. "You found the box," David said quietly. It was not a question. "You let them kill her," I shouted, throwing the photographs at his feet. "Emily figured out your lies, and you let them murder her." Margaret started crying, but David remained steady calm in a way that suddenly made sense. This was not a retired electrician. This was a United States Marshal who had spent his life managing dangerous situations. "Sit down, son," he said. "Do not call me son. My name is Charles." "No," he said firmly. "Charles Davies Jr. died in 1995. You are Ethan Davies, my son, in every way that matters. Except biologically," Logan spat. "Except you stole our ability to have children." David aged 10 years in that moment. Your biological father ordered the execution of 3 judges. He had a rival's entire family burned alive in their home, including 2 children younger than you were. The prosecutor said that the Davies bloodline was genetically predisposed to violence that it needed to end. It was that or leave you in the system where the family would eventually find and recruit you. So you played God, I said. I played father, he corrected. I raised you, loved you, kept you safe for 30 years. And Emily? His composure finally cracked. She would not stop digging. I warned her, begged her. When she started meeting with that lawyer, word got back to people who still monitor these things. The Davies have contacts everywhere, even in witness protection. They found out she was asking questions about sealed documents. I got a call saying they knew our location, that if we did not handle the problem internally, they would handle it themselves and take all of us. You chose them over her, I said, my voice breaking. I chose you and Logan over her, David said. If she had exposed us, you would all be dead within a week. The crash was professional. Quick. She did not suffer. You knew they were going to kill her. I knew they were going to kill someone. I could not save everyone. Tears ran down his weathered face. I have spent 30 years keeping you boys alive, every day wondering if this would be the day they found us. Every stranger at the door. Every wrong number phone call. You think I do not have nightmares about what I have done, but you are alive. You became a teacher. Logan became an engineer. You had lives, careers, love. Love built on lies, I said. Love is love. Margaret spoke for the first time. We were not your biological parents, but we loved you like our own. That was never a lie. I looked at the man who had raised me, taught me to ride a bike, walked me down the aisle at my wedding. David Davies, United States Marshal. The man who had saved me and damned me in equal measure. The man who had let my wife die to keep a 30-year-old secret. I am going to the FBI, I said, tonight. David nodded slowly. I know. There is a bag in the workshop with cash and clean documents. You will need to disappear after you talk to them. The Davies will come for you once this gets out. I do not care. Yes, he said sadly. You do. You are my son. You will survive. It is what I taught you. I drove straight to the FBI field office in downtown Cleveland that night. The building was mostly dark except for the security lights and a few windows on the 3rd floor where someone was always working. The security guard at the front desk looked at me with concern. I must have appeared insane, carrying a box full of documents, my eyes red from crying and rage, my clothes disheveled from tearing apart the workshop. I need to speak with someone about witness protection crimes, I said. I have evidence of a murder. The investigation that followed turned my life inside out for the 2nd time in a month. Agent Laura Bennett, a woman with kind eyes and steel in her voice, took my statement over the course of 12 hours. She made phone calls that brought in senior officials from the United States Marshal's Service, the Department of Justice, and even someone from the Attorney General's office who participated via secure video link. The USB drive Emily had left became evidence. The documents from David's workshop were cataloged and photographed. They reopened Emily's accident investigation, and within 2 weeks they had found what the local police had missed. Brake fluid on the road that should not have been there, skid marks that did not match the official report, and a traffic camera that showed a black SUV following Emily's car minutes before the crash. David and Margaret disappeared 4 days after I went to the FBI. Logan found their house empty, coffee still warm on the kitchen table, the television still on. They had activated some protocol vanished into whatever network protects former protectors. I never saw them again. Logan chose to go with them eventually. Said he could not handle knowing that strangers might come for him at any moment. He hugged me goodbye in a parking garage, handed me a burner phone with one number programmed in it, and told me to call if I ever truly needed him. The FBI offered me protection too. A new identity. a new life somewhere far from Cleveland. I declined. I was done running from someone else's past, done living lies layered on top of lies. Instead, I legally changed my name to what it had always been in my heart, Ethan Davies. Let the Davies come if they wanted. I had nothing left to lose. Jessica found me a month after everything exploded sitting at Emily's grave. The November ground had settled and the temporary marker had been replaced with black granite that read, "Beloved Wife Seeker of Truth." It was simpler than what the funeral director had tried to sell me, but it was honest. "I am sorry," Jessica said, placing fresh flowers next to mine. About what I said at the funeral, I was angry. She had been distant secretive. I thought she was having an affair. I never imagined the truth was this. "She was trying to protect everyone," I said. "Even you." The FBI told me she had written me a letter explaining everything. They found it in her office. She knew something might happen. Jessica sat down beside me on the cold grass. "She loved you, Ethan, more than you will ever know. That last video she made, she spent half of it talking about how you deserved the truth, how you deserved to make your own choices about your life." We sat in silence for a while. Two people bound by loss and truth. Finally, Jessica stood to leave, then turned back. "The yoga instructor, Ryan, his brother really was a federal attorney. She was trying to figure out how to get you both into legitimate witness protection with new identities you could choose yourselves. She had plane tickets booked for December, was going to surprise you with a fresh start. Now I teach chemistry at a high school in Columbus, Ohio, about as far from Cleveland as I could get while staying in the country. My students call me Mr. D, and none of them know that their teacher was born Charles Davies, Jr., son of a mob boss raised as Ethan Davies, son of a United States Marshal, who was not his father. They just know I am tough but fair, that I grade their lab reports on time, and that I keep a photo of my late wife on my desk. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment with a view of Mount Vernon. The walls are painted ocean mist, the color Emily wanted for our guest room. Sometimes I wake up at 2:30 a.m., certain I hear footsteps in the hallway, certain the Davies have finally found me. But then morning comes, and I make coffee, and I go teach kids about molecular bonds and chemical reactions, about how elements can be transformed into something entirely different under the right conditions. The truth about my family destroyed everything I thought I knew, but it also freed me from 30 years of carefully constructed lies. Emily died for that truth. And while I would trade anything to have her back, I understand now that living authentically, even with danger shadowing every step, is better than living safely in deception. Some nights I replay that USB video just to hear her voice, to see her face, to remember that someone loved me enough to risk everything for my right to know who I really am. The proof was not just in my father's workshop. The proof was in her courage, her determination, and her final act of love. That is my story. If you found it meaningful, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about times when you have had to choose between comfortable lies and difficult truths. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that remind us that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones meant to protect us. Thank you for watching, and remember, love might not always be enough to save someone, but truth, even when it destroys everything, can set you free.